On New Year's, there was what looks like a suspected terror attack in the American city of New Orleans. A truck was rammed into a crowd, running over many people, killing, I think, up to 14 people. There might be more. That number might change as more people are injured in the hospital and they are fighting for their lives and such. And this truck slammed into the crowd on New Year's as people were celebrating the coming of 2025. And the FBI did confirm that there was an ISIS flag within the truck. So the current suspicion, and of course we don't know this for sure, even though it's very hard for me to think like, yes, I just have the ISIS flag in my dashboard while I had my DUI, oopsie doopsie, is probably not a likely outcome here. I don't think many people keep an ISIS flag in their dashboard. Then there seems to be a decent chance that this was a ISIS-inspired attacker. Now, a lot of the previous ISIS-inspired attackers, for example, the Pulse nightclub shooter, was a lone wolf inspired by ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, whatever you want to call them. Whereas for this, we don't know if that's the case. It could be a continuation of the trend of a lone wolf inspired by the hateful rhetoric of the terrorist organization ISIS, and then goes out and does its own thing. Or it could be that they are in direct contact with ISIS, and they were giving them instructions on what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, etc. We don't know. This just happened. We're going to have to wait for the FBI to kind of tear this case open. But that's where we stand as of right now. Suspected ISIS-inspired or affiliated attacker drives truck into crowd of people in New Orleans, killing at least 14.
For joining us here.
Let's get a few more details because, I'm not a local to the area. I want to make sure that we get some more details.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us here on CBS News 24/7. I'm Lindsay Reiser, and we are following breaking news out of New Orleans. At least 10 people are dead and dozens more injured after city officials say a man intentionally drove a pickup truck into a crowd of people. This happened on the world-famous Bourbon Street overnight as people were celebrating the new year. It was around 3:15 in the morning local time. Officials say the man drove around barricades and hurtled down the street in very intentional behavior before opening fire on police officers. 2 officers were hit by gunfire. They are in stable condition in the hospital. CBS News has learned the suspect is dead, shot and killed by police. Now, officials say a long gun was recovered from the scene, and according to an investigative reporter with our affiliate WWL, it had a silencer, or more specifically, a suppressive device attached to it. Several potential explosive devices were also recovered near the scene and are being analyzed. The FBI is investigating this as a terrorist attack, and 2
By the way, there's been an update. The numbers increased slightly to 15 dead at this point. 15 dead.
Sources familiar with the investigation tell CBS News the deceased suspect was wearing body armor. The truck that plowed through that crowd appeared to be flying a large
body armor, long gun, rams crowd, opens fire on police.
Black flag.
So they obviously thought about this quite through. This was not a DUI that turned into a road rage. Body armor, long gun, purposely ramming into the crowd. Seems like it was, well, I'm not going to say well thought out, as in the guy was a genius mastermind for putting together that he can ram a truck and then shoot people. But he at least thought it out and prepared for it. So this was something that he organized. This was not a spur of the moment thing.
From the rear bumper, according to CBS News reviews of images, and law enforcement sources tell CBS News that investigators are looking into whether the flag is an ISIS flag or possibly tied to another foreign terror organization. Anna Schechter joins us now.
Okay, so they're saying it might be another foreign terrorist organization. What I heard was an ISIS flag. It could be. I see a lot of people see us like the seal of the Prophet Muhammad, and they say, "Oh, well, that's an ISIS flag." It's not necessarily an ISIS flag, is it? But whatever. It could be any number of flags, and the flag could mean nothing. The flag could be, and somebody said this in chat earlier, like, what do you think of the odds that the flag is actually complete misdirection, meant to, take your eyes over there? It's impossible to say. It really is impossible to say. Because if somebody, truly believed in the cause of, Salafi extremism, But they didn't really care much about the self. They didn't have a very big ego. A lot of terrorists have a gigantic ego, but let's say they were somebody with not a big ego, then it wouldn't be too surprising to me if, like, instead of going out there and screaming and going yada 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 or making a big manifesto, they're just like, what do I indicate as to my beliefs? Oh, just throw a flag in there somewhere. If they're gonna recover the truck anyway, they'll find it. But it's impossible to stay at this stage. Absolutely impossible.
Studio 57, she's a senior coordinating producer for our CBS News Crime and Public Safety Unit. What is the latest you're learning about the suspect?
The latest we can report the name of the suspect that investigators have homed in on. His name is Shamsud Din Jabbar, 42 years old, a U.S. citizen, resident.
Irish American?
Of Texas. There are previous criminal record, including theft and driving with a suspended license. So we're starting to piece together the profile of the man who carried out this attack at this time. So chilling. It does appear that this person took some time to prepare for this, prepared the vehicle. It looks like there was a flag. Investigators are saying they're investigating whether it's an ISIS flag or possibly another.
By the way, when I hear that, they're investigating whether it's an ISIS flag, how much investigation do you need to, there's not we're the official, look, okay, we're the unionized ISIS store, and if you want, it produced off the official trademark, and you don't want a knock-off flag, like many of our other fakers, like Haras al-Din, I see you over there, okay? They wouldn't, what do you mean, check if it's either a flag or not? You don't, pick up as, and it's like a big swastika in the middle, red all around, and you're like, oh, we need to investigate if this is a Nazi flag. No, you look at it, and then you compare. If you don't know, I guess you can Google what a Nazi flag looks like, and Google what an ISIS flag looks like. It's they're investigating whether or not it's a Nazi flag. It's not like the cloth has the ties. It either is or it isn't. You just take a look at it. But whatever, I guess I will say I will prefer this to them immediately saying it is or isn't, because somebody could misidentify the seal of the Prophet Muhammad or something else, and they'd be like, aha, see, so this is what ISIS, and ISIS is this, XYZ. So it is better, it's just it comes out very silly. It could be like a regional ISIS group like Boko Haram. I don't know if somebody would be in the United States and they're going to declare support to Daesh, and they decide to be like, you know what, I'm going to declare specific support to a Daesh affiliate, not Daesh directly. I don't know about that.
A terror group, foreign terror group's flag.
Did this vehicle belong to the suspect?
It seems the vehicle was obtained through a ride-share app program in Texas. So it was like a rented vehicle. So that's what we know at this time, not necessarily belonging to Din Jabbar, but that the vehicle was rented in Texas and then driven to New Orleans to carry out this attack. He was wearing tactical gear. We have a photo of him after he was killed by police, gunfire, and he's wearing camouflage pants, tactical gear. According to law enforcement sources, the long gun that he had a device that acts as a silencer. So all of this points to premeditation and a will to carry out an attack that would inflict as much carnage as possible.
And by the way, I'm looking around at the FBI statements about the flag to see if we got anything specific. Two things. Number one, other statements I'm finding by the FBI, or at least news organizations that are credible that are quoting the FBI, like Forbes, which is credible enough, I would say, is just saying that, even though I do see them make mistakes, is along the lines of yes, it's an ISIS flag. It's an ISIS flag, and they're not debating whether it is. So I think it's probably likely that it's an ISIS flag. That's the first thing. The second thing here is that Biden actually made a speech today, and it was on the terror attack, and we haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet. So I think I'd actually like to watch that speech right now. Biden, New Orleans speech, because he actually says in the speech that he believes that the attacker was inspired by ISIS.
This suspect did open.
It seems that, like, like we said earlier, probably the likely scenario, it's looking like that is probably the case.
In Homeland Security advisors.
Now let's get to the Biden speech. Here we go.
Continuing to answer
the people in New
all of the forensic.
Nicole, let me interrupt for President Biden's remarks.
Our hearts are with the people in New Orleans after the despicable attack that occurred in the early morning hours. To all the families of those who were killed, to all those who were injured, to all the people of New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know, I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you. We're going to stand with you as you mourn and as you heal in the weeks to come. I want to thank our brave first responders and law enforcement personnel who stopped the attacker in his tracks before he could kill or injure even more people. And I want to thank you to everyone at the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, including the FBI, for working nonstop to investigate this heinous act. The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened, why it happened, and whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years.
Not good. I mean, obviously it's bad no matter what, but every time you find out former Marine, former Reserve, former military, it always stings.
He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago.
There it is, Army Reserve.
The FBI also reported to me that
seems like when it is a shooter of some sort that was in the military, it's almost always in the Army Reserve.
Hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Okay,
so there's Biden again saying ISIS flag. So while some news organizations are being a little choppy about it, others are straight up saying yes. FBI and other statements saying yes. Biden's now saying, and this is from an hour ago, saying yes, out 1 to 2 hours ago, it was an ISIS flag. So at this point, I would say that it's almost certain that it was an ISIS flag. And while the tiny chance of it being misdirection, which I don't understand what the purpose of that misdirection would be, seen as the main purpose of terrorism is to inspire terror. I don't understand. Unless there's an end game here I just don't see. I think it's very likely that, yes, this was an ISIS-inspired attack. Now, I'm going to lean towards ISIS-inspired because that just seems to be the general trend for the attacks that have happened in the United States outside of directly coordinated, supplied, etc. I don't know for sure. This guy wasn't just, like, randomly, like, stabbing at people. He did have body armor. He did have a long gun. So I don't know for sure. But that is the general trend. And that's probably where my mind's going at this point.
Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby. The situation is very fluid, and the investigation has a preliminary stage. And the fact is that right now, there you go. The law enforcement and intelligence community are continuing to look for any connections, associations, or co-conspirators. We have nothing additional to report at this time. The investigation is continuing to be active, and no one should jump to conclusions. I've directed my Attorney General, the FBI Director, the Secretary of Homeland Security, the head of the National Counterterrorism Center, and the intelligence community to work on this intensively until we have a full and complete information. And once we have that information, I will share that information as soon as we can confirm it. Additionally, we're tracking the explosion of a cyber truck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas.
What? The explosion in the cyber truck outside Trump Hotel? What did I miss? What did I sleep through? I'm sorry, what happened? Explosion, cyber truck, Trump. 1 dead after Cybertruck explosion.
occurred is occurred.
What is this? What did I miss?
Law enforcement.
I mentioned the cyber truck attack in Las Vegas. Right now, we are going to go to a law enforcement briefing of that event.
I don't need a full briefing. I just wanted to see the footage of it happening. Here we go.
This morning at about the Tesla charging stations, and it arrived here in Las Vegas this morning at about 7:30 and went up and down Las Vegas Boulevard before immediately pulling into the Trump Towers. Unfortunately, there were 7 people that reported injuries.
My goodness. I mean, they could, honestly, before I jump to any conclusions, I'm going to put down the percentage chance that this is just another flaw in the Cybertruck we have yet to find, manufacturing error. So before I jump to, oh, this was obviously, Al-Qaeda trying their new strategy of XYZ, I'm just going to put forward that it was, just like a Tesla oopsie. Like, it's not, I'm not saying that it's what happened. I'm just going to say that I can't say at this point. Can't say, because I would say somebody deciding to do with like an IRA style car bomb outside of Trump Hotel and using the Cybertruck of all things to do it. Not only does that feel almost like too on the nose for me to like believe, why the Cybertruck? Why would you use a Cybertruck? Why not like a $1,000 clunker or does it make sense? So as of right now, like, I'm leaning towards it could simply just be a battery issue. But we don't know. Don't jump to conclusions, as President Biden, at least president for 19 more days, said.
Enforcement and the intelligence community are investigating this as well, including whether there's any possible connection with the attack in New Orleans. Thus far, there's nothing to report on that score at this time. I directed my team to make sure every resource is made available to federal, state, and local law enforcement to complete the investigation in New Orleans quickly and to make sure there's no remaining threat to the American people. And we'll support the people of New Orleans as they begin the hard work of healing. New Orleans is a place unlike any other place in the world. It's a city full of charm and joy. So many people around the world love New Orleans because of its history, its culture, and above all, its people.
I'm just going to put out there that if I wanted to differentiate a city, I'd probably do more than just say, like, it's different than any other city in the world. Our city has joy and charm. I'm not saying New Orleans doesn't have it. I'm just saying it's not, like, groundbreaking work here.
So I know, while this person committed a terrible assault on...
Mole, thanks for the $2. 1 second. I see we got like a few donations. Let me go through this. Maybe the Trump-Musk connection.
Resedem287 has donated $5. All these rogue trucks committing terror. I can't take it.
I mean, I just couldn't imagine someone being like, I'm going to spend how much more money on, well, I guess if you go to prison, at that point, what do you care? On like a Cybertruck to specifically do this outside of Trump, like, hotel to make a point. Like, it's not impossible. We'll see, though. We'll see. Oh, there's a few other messages here I missed. From Rose, all these rogue trucks committing terror. I can't take it. Hey, vehicular terrorism is it's one of the major forms of terrorism today, actually. Do you think if we lived in the 1880s, they would be doing these with horses? Maybe carriages. I think carriages would probably do more damage. I'm from Fort Hood, Texas, and a radicalized army officer shot and killed 13 people in 2009. Major Nadal Malik Hassan. There's been a few instances of stuff like this. What was that guy's, there's this one guy that looks like Corey in the House's father that did like a really, he went on like a string of shootings before getting surrounded. I forget what his name was, but there's been a few of these cases, yeah. Anyway, back to Biden. He's almost done.
On the city. The spirit of our New Orleans will never...
The cop, I think I might be wrong. I think I might... But he was a former veteran as well. Then he became a cop, and then he went on like a crazy shooting, yes. 2012, 2013, I think so. I mean, I was like 11 at the time, so this is all very vague memories.
While this person committed a terrible assault on the city, the spirit of our New Orleans will never, never, never be defeated. It always will shine forth. We've seen that time and time again throughout its history, and I know we'll see it again in the days and weeks ahead. May God bless the people of New Orleans. May God bless our police and our first responders. May God protect our troops, and we'll keep you fully contemporaneously informed. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a few things I got to throw out there. Okay, so let me give you guys the bad news first. For people who have not been following the fight against ISIS since 2017, 2018, when Trump was like, "We won, woohoo!" and it was like, you know, there's sparkles everywhere, the history book closes, and they all lived happily ever after, and we all ride off into the sunset. Well, while others were doing that, ISIS's most diehard fighters were going out and hiding in the desert in Syria and Iraq, just the middle of nowhere, just waiting for the moment that they could come out of a hole, where all they've been doing for 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 years is just thinking about how they can go out there and do stuff like this, how they can go get back at the people who got them. That's not even talking about the massive amount of ISIS prisoners all across areas in northeastern Syria. Not just northeastern Syria, but especially concentrated in northeastern Syria, when there have been many attempted prison breaks that could see some of the most diehard, including many foreign ISIS fighters, escape, and they have escaped in the past, or their wives and children. And let me just tell you something, and this is really sad, but a lot of these children are getting like hardcore indoctrinated in these facilities where they're being kept with their mothers and families. And it's breeding a whole new generation of ISIS terror. And I'm just saying that to be blunt. That's not to say like, oh, these kids don't deserve da-da-da. If you could take every one of these kids and put them in like a program of de-radicalization, educate, that would be the best case scenario. I'm just being honest that they're in a closed off community, a prison system, a prison area, where they are being detained, surrounded by the most diehard ISIS fighters in the world, where they're being told messages by the most radical ones that any day now, Daesh is coming, they'll be liberated, and they'll be able to bring terror upon those who put them in this confinement. And when Turkey invaded northeastern Syria, there were prison breaks. There was escalations in tribal village elder assassinations. There were decreases in anti-ISIS operations because the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, who we worked with to fight against ISIS, they were too busy fighting the Turks. And now once again, with the SNA and the Turks, pushing the SDF, they're taking more resources to go fight them, and ISIS activity is increasing. Not only against the SDF, but of course, with the collapse of the Assad regime, they're trying to take advantage of the chaos too, which is probably one of the most dangerous parts of the Assad regime's collapse. Even though I think it's good that the Assad regime collapsed, one of the most dangerous parts is going to be organizations like ISIL, like Daesh, trying to take advantage of the situation, trying to fill in the power vacuum, or even if they don't fill in the power vacuum, take advantage in the power hiatus to engage in violence. And even if they can't take over a village, maybe they can intimidate half the villagers not to speak out against them, operate against them, or work with the authorities. And that's where a lot of these village elder assassinations come from. You might not be able to control the town, but you can sure terrify the people who live in it. Now, that's what's been going on. So on one hand, ISIS doesn't have territory anymore, but they still have diehard fighters in the desert. They still have sympathizers around the world, including in the West, as we see with this terror attacker. They have facilities where their people are imprisoned, but they're generating and training a whole new generation and ideologically of ISIS fighters in these areas, in these little prison camps, through their mothers, through their children. And they are increasing their activity post-Assad shakeup. And that's not even talking about other areas where ISIS has been present, whether it's been Libya whether it's been the Philippines or at least ISIS affiliates that have been active. The only point I'm putting forward is that the fight against ISIS never ended. It's just that the fight against ISIS's territorial holdings ended. So for those who like checked out, was like, oh, it's all over, that isn't necessarily the case. Al-Qaeda, we've been fighting Al-Qaeda for over 20 years, and they keep getting smashed, reform. And I mean, you know, Haras al-Din, now we have different affiliates like that in Syria, where we're still fighting them there, They're a lot weaker than they used to be, but we're still fighting them. And as many people were closing the history books on ISIS, they were trying to figure out how to survive in the fringes, in the undergrowth of society. And now here they are, inspiring the same terror attacks that they were during the Obama and early Trump administrations.
Burns is an immoral, morally corrupt, bankrupt
I'm not
man.
saying that they're going to get to the same heights that they were before, or they're going to inspire the same amount of violence as they did before. But what I am saying is that some people might have jumped the gun narratively, and the main focus of our operation in Syria has mostly been to fight ISIS. I think there's also the obvious objective of trying to get rid of the Iranian crescent to Lebanon, transportation of weapons to Hezbollah and organizations like that. But it's been to fight ISIS. We're not the only ones. Many other have. But after they lost their territorial holdings, I think a lot of people started, Erdogan, aiming directly towards their next security priorities, assuming the first one to be largely handled. For example, maybe it doesn't matter as much to the Turks, the idea of these prison breaks or chaos in the back of the SDF's, you know, territorial holdings, because they don't want the SDF to hold. And for them, like, you know, if they collapse, it's a good thing. But for everybody else, if ISIS is going to fill in that power vacuum, and there's tons of prisons where they're going to make prison breaks from, and we're going to deal with the consequences of that, or it's the fact that there's just going to be less pressure on ISIS, so it drags out the fight, gives them more time to recover, gives them more time to inspire terror, gives them more time to fundraise, gives them more time to organize prison breaks. Point is, the pedal should have never been taken off the metal. The end of their territorial holdings, while it was not the end of pressure, for some of our allies, it became the end of that as a priority, if it was ever treated as a priority in the first place. And it needs to be the number one priority now. And honestly, we need to view the nation states that are not treating it as the main priority in these areas as directly compromising the mission against ISIS. And we need to talk about that openly. And while I'm not against, of course, having an honest security conversation with the Turks, if every time they invade northeastern Syria, ISIS activity increases, anti-ISIS operations decrease, and they make prison break attempts, there's a correlation here that is disturbing me, and I think it needs to be dealt with. As for inspiring people to do terrorism in the West, it's a lot less clear solution. The less successful the organization, the less likely I think they're going to be able to inspire these types of attacks. But at the end of the day, it's ideological. And if you're getting radicalized online, or however this guy was radicalized, we don't know how that is yet. We know that he is an American citizen from Texas. That's really all we know about the guy. It's hard to say about radicalization, because the organization could be going down, sinking, and they could be doing these types of attacks still. But people like to be going on the up and up. And I think that there's a reason why there was a huge slump in the amount of inspired ISIS attacks for the last, 6-7 years, is because ISIS was down and out. And now they're not as down and out as they used to be. Of course, I don't think that's the only reason, but that's one of the scary reasons. Twistimer says, Turkey should just occupy Syria. That is a bad idea. No bueno, I think, is my official position. No bueno.